Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Lewis and this is the Saku-san channel. Now on today's episode we're going to be going through some of my spiritual jazz albums. So just to give you some context, a viewer of the channel some time ago, I can't remember how long, but it's quite a while ago, basically said to me, oh, how about doing a roundup of your spiritual jazz albums? And I kind of went, yeah, do I really want to be doing that? It's come to, so I didn't think it was a terrible idea, just for whatever reason. I think I had loads of jazz that I kind of wanted to do videos on prior to doing this. But seeing as we're coming to the end of the year, as you can, well, hope you might be able to tell, it's through the lighting anyway that it's it's winter time in London and it gets dark very quickly, hence why the lighting is so off kind of thing. And yeah, I don't have means to correct it at this moment in time, but yeah, please bear with me on this particular video. But we're going to be doing spiritual jazz today, and yes, so just to give you all right, we're going to do two bits. Yeah, we're going to do some housekeeping, then we're going to press on with the video. So hopefully it won't be too long, it won't be too taxing for you. So first thing, I wanted to say thank you to Public Piper for making another contribution to the channel via the YouTube thanks button. Thank you so much, Public Piper. Your contributions are gratefully received. If you are, as generous a spirit as Public Piper, and you'd like to make a contribution to the channel, just by way of saying, you know what, thanks Lewis for putting me onto this album or putting this material out there into the world, and I've learnt something, and I've that kind of thing, and I've been able to show off to other people my jazz knowledge. Hey, if you want to make a contribution to the channel, two main means of doing it. If you are subscribed already to the channel, if you're not, please subscribe to the channel. But if you are, there is a thanks icon in the description area where when you hit it, you can basically make a donation to the channel via the YouTube system. Alternatively, there's some details about my PayPal account. Again, it's going to be in the description area, or in the main channel banner, there's going to be a link there. So again, if you think to yourself, I like what you're doing, Lewis, I like you to develop as a channel, that type of thing, and you want to make a contribution just to say thank you for what you're doing, type thing, that's the means of doing it. So for anyone who does do that, you're going to be mentioned at some point. I'm not going to take it for granted, type thing. So for those who have, in this occasion, this is Public Piper, thank you, gratefully received. As the more eager, well, the more observant amongst you can tell, I've got on one of the prototypes for the Saku-san branded t-shirts. So there is two designs, and in future videos you'll not only see some of the other color combinations, but you'll see maybe one of the other designs as well. All depends, type of thing. But this is one of the prototypes. I'm really stoked with it. I'm really happy, to be quite honest with you. I didn't think I'll get to this point, but here it is, just to give you an example in one of the color schemes. More than likely there's going to be three to begin with. There's going to be, even if there's no demand, I'm going to make these t-shirts anyway, just for I like a slogan t-shirt, and I don't see why I shouldn't have my own, to be quite honest with you. But in terms of what's going to, if they are released to the general public, initially there's maybe going to be 3 base t-shirt colors, but each one of which will have a different logo color combination, so it stands out. So as I said, in videos to come, you're going to see a couple of the other color combinations. If you are interested, If you do have an opinion, please let me know in the comment section. If this is something that you would like me to do, you know, if you like one of these t-shirts. Yeah, please bear in mind, it's really important that you do understand that these t-shirts will be made specifically for those who are interested. There will not be stocks of these t-shirts around. I will make them specifically for those who are truly interested in it and have paid the appropriate fee for these t-shirts. So yeah, and it's really important for me to say as well, because this is going to be done at such a small scale, I cannot send these t-shirts outside the UK territory. So if you're in England, Scotland and Wales, happy to send it to you if you do want one of these t-shirts. If you are outside the UK territory, I'm afraid the only way you're going to be able to get one is if I send it to an address in England on your behalf, and that person, either you collect it from that person or that person sends it on to you. I can't be sending it to anywhere else outside of England. A, it's too expensive, the responsibility is too high if it all goes kind of like pear-shaped type thing. But it's mainly those kind of issues. Yeah, so I'd love you guys to have these t-shirts. I'd love to see them in the wild, but I totally understand, but I cannot send it outside of the UK territory. The economics, I don't imagine there's gonna, you know, people are gonna be beating off my door to get these t-shirts. There's gonna be a select few who want these t-shirts, and I'm happy to accommodate them if you are in the UK territory. Outside of that, I'd have to send it to an English address, for example, and then that person, or you either collect it from them or they send it on to you and they take full responsibility. Yeah, as I said, it's just way too expensive, and the economies of scale just simply don't make sense type thing. So please bear that in mind. So yeah, as you can see, Saku-san, Jazz Odyssey. I'm pleased as punch that it exists. So yeah. Let me know in the comment section whether you like the design, whether you're interested, and we kind of like, we can take it from there, kind of the response to what you guys think about it. So, but I'm certainly going to be wearing them anyway. If nothing else, you're going to see me with color combinations of this design on different colored t-shirts. I want it, so I'm going to have it. So there you go. On today's episode, enough of that preamble. On today's episode, I'm going to be showing you some of my spiritual jazz albums from my collection. Now, just to preface some of this, so that we all kind of singing from the same hymn sheet, when I'm talking about spiritual jazz in this case, we are talking about the Black American phenomena of it, the subgenre in jazz. Now, of course, around the world, there's spiritual jazz for whatever territory it is, and that's not a contradiction. It is spiritual jazz, but I'm talking about, on today's episode, we're going to be focusing on the Black American version of spiritual jazz. Now, as I understand it, late 60s, definitely into the 70s and into probably the mid 80s, lots of Black American artists were going to Africa as a spiritual, let's say a spiritual, I'm trying to think of the word, what I would say, pilgrimage, in search of meaning, self-reflection, inspiration, that type of thing. And a lot of material came out of that era with that kind of sensibilities. So again, this is what the albums that we're going to feature on today. Now, yeah, this is the definition I'm going to be using. So predominantly US artist. The band stroke album name will probably contain the term art, creative, or some kind of name which you would associate with the continent of Africa. So that's the kind of loose criteria I'm going to be using. Also, the content of these albums can and probably will contain an element of poetry or spoken word, which kind of overlays the jazz, you know, that type of thing. So that's the loose criteria that well, it's not kind of loose, yeah, that's the criteria that I'm going to be using for today's video. I'm going to go through some of them, give you some of my thoughts on each album. This should be a relatively short video because I made these notes some time ago, so I think we'll be able to whiz through it. Hopefully one or two you've already got, but I'm hoping that the majority of the albums I'm going to be showing you today, you know, you either weren't aware of their existence, or you wouldn't mind somebody else's opinion on these albums, and that might help you formulate whether or not you want to add these albums to your collection. So let's start at the beginning. The first album today is let's just put my notes somewhere that I can find them. It was recorded in 1977, but it's actually a 1980 release. So please assume with all these albums that they were kind of passion projects and they were funded by local arts councils. So more than likely the initial run was extremely limited. That type of situation happened. So yeah, just assume all of that to be true. So as I said, recorded in 77, I believe, released in 1980, World Experience Orchestra, and the album's entitled As Time Flows On. Let me show you the reverse side. Now, as I said, well, hopefully I've alluded to already, the lighting is going to be terrible today. The outside, it's getting dark already and it's not even mid-afternoon. So please bear that in mind. I don't have the facilities to overcome this phenomena. So just please be patient with me. Yeah, besides, you want to see the albums, you don't really want to look at me. I do want you to see the t-shirt, but you don't have to look at me, type of thing. So yeah, don't worry about that. Just forgive me. So in my notes I've written, it's important for you to listen to the whole of this album, and I would say this for all the albums I'm going to show you today. Listen to them in their entirety, because yeah, you might just miss out on something that you could have enjoyed because you was whizzing through it. A good example of late 70s spiritual jazz, never overindulgent, never overwhelming, a genuine and sincere exploration of the sacred and profane. I do make myself laugh sometimes with how I write notes and what I'm actually writing, because it's like a stream of consciousness type of thing. But yeah, that's just cracked me up. It's a 6-track album, 4 of which I really enjoyed, and I would say are in the more of the spiritual jazz camp. Probably none of these albums the whole way through is entirely spiritual jazz. They'll have elements of other sub-genres in jazz featured on that album. But yeah, I'm going to leave a link down below so at least you can hear those tracks, individual tracks. If it's the case that I've got to give you the whole album, then I'll leave a link to that as well. But I'll highlight the track that I think you should, you know, pay special attention to. So on this occasion, the track would be Rain. What else have I written? 4 tracks each of, yeah, there's 6 tracks on there. 4 of the tracks really hit the spot with me. Each one of those tracks, each one of the 4 tracks was an adventure in itself. Observational, without judgment, accessible, and peaceful, I've written. Really enjoyed the vocals of a gentleman called Roy Hall, and I'm always a sucker for jazz flute. And the jazz flute was done by Earl Grant Lawrence. So big up those 2 people, Roy Hall on vocals and Earl Grant Lawrence on flute. Yeah, really floated my boat. At one stage I saw this album quite often in the wild. Don't see it as much so more anymore, and depending on what format you want it in will determine how probably easy it is to get and how expensive it's going to be. I'm not sure how much this particular album would cost now, but certainly have a listen to it prior to considering purchasing it. See if it works for you, and if it does, you'll be able to get it from someone, definitely. I just don't know how much it will cost and whether or not I think that's a, in terms of economics, whether that's a good thing or bad thing. You've got to make up your own mind on it. So first album today, 1977, World Experience Orchestra. Album's entitled As Time Flows On. That's the first one. The second one today is a 1981 release, and it's by the Creative Arts Ensemble, and the album's entitled One Step Out. So the main guy is called BJ Crowley. So let me show you the album cover. Yeah, it's got a sense of fun about it, and yeah, it's definitely of its era type thing. So yeah, that's the reverse. So this is a 4-track album. Notables on this album: Henry Franklin appears on bass, and Gary Bias appears on sax. So that's really good. Yeah, I quite like that. I can also see, just by looking at on the back of it, George Bohannon appears on here as well. So yeah, there you go. So in terms of my notes, I've written forceful, my overall impressions of the album. Forceful yet well measured. Of the, let's see, 4-track album, I've written not a reflection on vocalist or lyrical content, but would have enjoyed this album more without the vocal element. So yeah, I think I found the vocals on there to be a little overindulgent, and perhaps they should have made a different choice by way of vocalist. So yeah, it was just maybe the vocalist, the pitch and tone wasn't to my taste, and if you just substituted the vocalist out for somebody else, I would have enjoyed it more. But it's something to be aware of. Really enjoyed the original compositions. Without doubt, a high standard of musicianship. That's good. That's a good thing to know. And what have I special mention to the Daisy Kumalafi on flute. So it seems like when I was going through listening to these albums, I was definitely in the mood for a jazz flute experience. So hence why it was, I got no doubts that it was a standout in terms of musicianship. It was a standout performance on this album. So please bear that in mind if you don't like jazz flute, and you don't maybe like wonky jazz vocals. This might not be the album for you. But yes, again, I think the prices for this album have like skyrocketed since I purchased it. Again, it's going to depend on what format you want it in, so you're going to have to make an informed decision as to whether or not you think it's worth the actual cost of the album. I'm glad to have it in my collection, hence why it's still here. But yeah, you'll have to make a choice. I'll leave a link down below. The track I'm going to be highlighting is Flashback of Time. I'm going to be highlighting, but I imagine quite a few of you have got this album anyway. So, but for those who don't, at least you can hear it for yourself and make your own informed choice. So that's the second album today. The third album today is a 1984 release by Khan Jamal, and the album's entitled Infinity. There you go. Yeah, I like the cover for that, I must admit. So this is a recent repress, and in England it was done by a company or a label called Jazz Room Records. That label's pretty good in the sense of it does give you some classic albums at reasonable prices, and the pressing, no complaints about it. You know, the pressing to audio price, you know, all those variable things are definitely in favor of the consumer. So have a look at the Jazz Room Records back catalogue, see if there's anything that you like. But certainly this one can be found, like, by modern standards, it's as cheap as chips type thing. So if you do happen to like this album, certainly in the UK you'll be able to find this album relatively easy, and it's going to be at a fair price. So let's just read some of my notes. So Khan Jamal is a vibrologist, or yeah, he plays a vibraphone anyway. Not strictly speaking a spiritual jazz album, but however has these elements on at least 2 of the tracks, and that's why I well, that's the reason for purchasing this album in my particular case. It's a 5-track album in total, although by no means an unpleasant experience. My general impression was it's okay, and nothing more than that. See, oh geez, I was definitely brutal when I was listening to this album. So of the 5 tracks, 2 of which certainly floated my boat. Definitely wanted the album at the price point, so forth. Probably if it was more expensive I would have given it a pass, but of the 5 tracks, 2 of which did entertain me. They have spiritual jazz elements to them, and that's probably what tipped me over the edge, why I happened to purchase them. So not sure if I showed you the reverse side. There you go. So yeah, yeah, just as like a casual throw out thing, in putting this video together and getting these albums together, so yeah, they're on my shelves all in the same place kind of thing, so I can find them. But what I found hard about putting, what is having to listen to, you know 10, 15, 18 spiritual jazz albums one after the other. I did find that taxing, I gotta be honest. It's with my jazz taste, I kind of like to go all over the place in terms of jazz when I'm listening to it. Hence why you see with my other videos where it's like 5 jazz albums, they all got, I don't just do one kind of, either one artist or one particular sound in jazz. I like to mix it up, and that's just how I listen to jazz. So it was a struggle for me to listen to, you know, one spiritual jazz album after another. Hey, that's just an observation anyway. So that's the 3rd album today. As I said, Khan Jamal, Infinity, and it's a 1984 release. The track that I'm going to be highlighting from this particular album is The Known Unknown, and hopefully you're going to enjoy it. I certainly did anyway. So that's the 3rd album today. Right, the 4th album today is a 1983 album. I've just seen in my notes something which kind of like threw me off, and I just want to see if that's actually the case. No, why did I write that then? Oh, so the Daisy Kumalafe is on this one as well, on alto sax. Okay, so where have I written? Anyway, we may be able to get to that at some stage. So 1983 release. It's by a gentleman called Nate Morgan, and the album's entitled Journey into Negritia. Yeah, and let me show you the reverse side. I have my suspicions that quite a few of you might have this album as well. Certainly when it was re-released, it was widely available. I'm not sure about what the case is now. So yeah, let me see what my notes say. Again, not strictly a spiritual jazz album, but it's quite a collection of jazz subgenres. So it's a 6-track album. So I've written, judged solely on its content, this is an accomplished jazz album containing some interesting vistas. I have to admit that I've underestimated how good a jazz pianist Mr. Morgan actually is. So probably from the time that I purchased it to doing this video, I've probably listened to it twice, and just through sheer volume of albums, I've just forgotten what it sounded like and what my kind of impressions of it were. Just happens by way of volume, you know how it is. And yeah, it sounds overall a positive experience anyway. The track that I'm going to be highlighting from this particular album is Mrafu. Anyway, it's spelled Mrafu. That's the track that I'm going to be using from this album. I'll leave a link down below so you can hear it for yourself. Again, I think the prices have crept up for this album. Again, it depends on what format you want it on. You'll have to make a decision as to whether or not that works for you. But yes, I was glad to revisit this album. Glad to have it in my collection, my spiritual jazz collection. It's not going anywhere. So yeah, just bear that in mind when I'm saying what I'm saying. Your mileage may vary in terms of whether or not you think that at its current price to purchase, whether or not that fits into your collection. But I'm certainly glad to have it anyway. I like Nate Morgan. I think what I was trying to allude to was he might be one of the musicians on Jesse Sharp Quintet, the Jesse Sharp Quintet band. Maybe that's what I was alluding to. Otherwise, I don't know why I've written that. So that's the 4th album today. As I said, I'm going to whiz through these because there's quite a few. So the 5th album today is a 1977 release. It's by a group called Orasi, and the kind of subtitle for their band is the positive. Is that the name of the? Yeah, it's called Orasi. Yeah, the title of the album is The Positive Force, and let me show you. I strongly suspect that quite a few of you have got this album. So if you do have it, I'm probably going to confirm what you've already thought. If you've never seen this before, I'm going to give you some kind of general impression of what I thought about this album. So this is a spoken word stroke poetry album in terms of its main content. And I've written in my notes of the albums I'm going to be showing you today, this is one of the albums that has one of the strongest claims to being a genuine spiritual jazz album. There are, it looks like 9 tracks on this album. So I've written, there are some moments on this album of, let's see, some really entertaining moments on this album. Perhaps to 2023 ears, it might come across slightly as a parody, but I don't doubt the genuine sincerity behind the album. It's heartfelt. Yeah, so yeah, if you listen to enough spiritual jazz, if you get exposed to enough of it, at some points it does become a bit of a parody of itself. And whilst that's entertaining, you kind of find yourself sometimes rolling your eyes at what's going on, because you're listening to modern sensibilities and you're not thinking about the time in which it was created. So do try and bear that in mind when you're listening to this album. There you go. Again, great images there. Really do like that. So those who have got this album will no doubt agree with me. The recording of this album it's absolutely shocking, and it's not necessarily the artist's fault. I blame the engineer more, but the engineer might be the artist themselves. So as I said in the preamble at the beginning, a lot of these albums were financed by community grants, art council grants, that sort of thing. And they were, when they were originally released, they were on super limited runs. So you do have to bear this in mind. But of the albums I'm going to show you today, this is probably the single album where the limitations of finances really has kicked in, kind of thing. And it's unfortunate because I do enjoy this album, I really do, but it's just not the greatest recording. Hence it's the pressing itself, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's the initial recording of it. It was probably done on a 4-track, you know what I mean, or whatever. It was, yeah, it's you have to bear that in mind when you're listening to this one. But yeah, a really sincere spiritual jazz album. Yeah, if I was to, like, somebody said to me, oh, pull out from your collection a spiritual jazz album, I'd probably go for this one first and go, like, if you want to know what that sounds like, that subgenre, listen to this. So yeah. Yeah, in terms of originals of this are just ridiculous money, just absolutely ridiculous. You will be able to find I'm not sure about other formats, to be quite honest, but certainly on vinyl if you can get it if you want it. It's just a question of which pressing of it you want and how much you're willing to pay to have the experience. I'm certainly glad to have it in my collection. I bought it when it was re-released, so yeah, it was affordable. I'm not, yeah, I don't know whether or not with current prices I would have paid for it. I'm not entirely sure. I probably would have, because I wanted the experience, but it's just to give you a heads up with that. So Orasi, the Positive Force, and the track that I'm going to be using to highlight to you is African in Winter. I think that's going to give you a really good, if you've never heard it, I'm excited for you, because it is the quintessential spiritual jazz track. You're going to know where you stand if once you heard that. If you like it, then you'll be fine with the rest of spiritual jazz, Black American spiritual jazz. You're going to be fine. If you don't like it, then more than likely you won't like any other spiritual jazz, because it's kind of one of those outliers which became the norm type thing. So yeah, like I said, I got a feeling that quite a few of you have got this album, and you probably agree with my sentiment by way of how it's been recorded, which can't be helped. So that was the 5th album today. Let's find the 6th one. The 6th album today is a 1975 album, and I would say this is actually a soul jazz album when you think about it in its entirety, but it has spiritual jazz elements. It's done by a group of artists, but the lead one is Doug Hammond, former husband of Jean Khan. Yeah, no, is that Doug Hammond? Yeah, I think it is. Let me know in the comment section if I'm talking absolute garbage. But anyway, it's Doug Hammond. The album's called Reflection in the Sea of Noonan. And I wouldn't be surprised if quite a few of you have got this album. As I said, it's a 1975 release. So you may have seen it with the same cover, but I've certainly seen it with that image, and it's coloured. So anyway, so in my notes again, not a spiritual jazz album in its entirety. I did enjoy Doug Hammond's velvety vocal styles. Yeah, Doug Hammond can sing, man. There's no doubts about that. So he's singing. My comments on it is like far from a top level vocalist, but it works in this particular context. I followed it up with writing, if you like Gil Scott-Heron, you'll probably enjoy this album. So 8-track album. Yeah, I'm thinking about it after the fact. I think I enjoy his vocal. I think I was being a bit too harsh there, to be quite honest. It's at least it's a unique vocals. He's not trying to sound like somebody else, but it is kind of a vocal style of that period. But he's definitely not trying to sound like anybody else apart from himself. So yeah. The track that I would recommend from this album, which I'm going to leave in the description area, is Wake Up Brothers. Again, a really good example of spiritual jazz, where kind of spiritual jazz, and kind of like it really does give you an understanding of where Black America was at that stage. Yeah, when I hear it, I think of that era. Not to say I'm in that age group, but I think of the films from that era, the kind of black exploitation films, and how people were talking. I'm not saying like jive talking, but you kind of get what I mean when I'm thinking about it. Is anybody notable who appears on this album? Nobody what comes to mind necessarily. Have I written anything else? No. Yeah, well, let's press on. Again, I think quite a few of you would have this album. If you haven't heard or seen this album before, or have seen it but didn't know what it sounded like, I'm going to leave a link down below so you can hear it for yourself and you can make a decision as to whether or not you want to purchase it. Certainly in the UK British market, there are quite a few vinyl versions of it. Some of them are reasonable in price, some of them have crept up in price. You'll have to make an informed decision as to whether or not you think it A is worth that price, and B, you know, if you want it in your collection. Again, I'm happy to have it in my collection, my spiritual jazz subsection. Really happy to have it because it's a really good example. It's not wholly a spiritual jazz album, but I'm just glad to have it, full stop. But I don't want to over egg it either. It's good. Yeah. So that was the 6th album today. Right, let me take a little slurp. The 7th album today is by a gentleman called Haki R, Madhubuti. And he's accompanied by the African Liberation Arts Ensemble. Hence why you know, that was part of the definition of like how you can tell a spiritual jazz album. And the album's entitled Madasi, which I believe is translated into thank you. So let me show you the cover, and let me show you the reverse. So definitely, just as a kind, you know, as I say, backing up what I said in the preamble, the name of the artist, the name of the band, the name of the title of the album, this album all conforms to what you would expect from a spiritual jazz album. Do excuse me. It's really quite funny. It just makes me laugh, kind of thing. So this is a 5-track album, predominantly spoken word stroke poetry. And I've written in terms of my notes, along with the Orasi album. Again, this will denote kind of like, if you're looking for a definition of Black American spiritual jazz album, this is going to tick those boxes. It will do everything for you. So in my reflections on this album, powerful and thought-provoking, a thing of beauty, I've written. Really glad to what is that? I can't even read my own handwriting. I think it's here, this album. I don't know what I'm writing there, because that makes no sense, because I own it. So Yeah, probably what I meant was it's been a while since I've heard this album, and I couldn't remember. You know, sometimes you just forget why you buy an album unless you play it. It's in your loop of albums that you constantly play type thing. Um, yeah, so I've probably just forgotten about why I bought it type of thing. But yeah, glad to revisit it. Certainly in terms of spiritual jazz, this is like the epitome of that type of subgenre in jazz. So yeah, really glad to give this one a revisit. Um, I think this one has gone up in price as well. I think from when I purchased it to when I've seen it within like the last year, it's probably gone up in price probably by about 40%, something like that. So in other formats, I'm not sure what the pricing will be. In vinyl, I'd say shop around and really. I know there were a lot of copies of this when it got re-released. There were a lot of copies in the European market. So just be aware, try and get the best deal that you can for yourself. Um, yeah, so, if it works in your collection, which I hope it will do, you should be able to find one out there. Like I said, 1984 release, 5-track album. The track that I'm going to be highlighting down below for you to hear for yourself is a track called Rainforest. I hope that you're going to enjoy it. Yeah, so that's the 7th album. We've got a few more to do, and hopefully we can do this before the memory card goes a bit funny. So the next album today is an album released in 1974, and it's by a gentleman called John Betch and the John Betch Society, and the album's entitled Earth Blossom. Yeah, let's just show you the cover. Yeah, that's a spiritual jazz cover if I've ever seen one, or one of that era. That's, yeah, super got that. Okay. Again, I've written in my notes, not an out and out spiritual jazz album, but a really decent jazz album, full stop. Very glad to have it in my collection. So yeah, that's a benefit if I just like the jazz, if I like the album anyway, and it just happens to have spiritual jazz elements to it, perfect. You know what I mean? Interesting compositions to be found here. 7 tracks. The track that I'm going to be showing you, well, highlighting from this album is Ode to Africa. And I think you're going to enjoy that one as well. I really do think, yeah, it's certainly, I think that's the kind of trigger for why I just said, you know what, I'm having this album. Yeah, that type of thing. So, yeah, this was re-released relatively recently, and it was kind of expensive for what it is. So do bear that in mind if you are going to be purchasing it. It's probably crept up a little bit in price, but I'd certainly say listen to the whole album first. Make sure you like it, then commit to it if you so choose from there. But don't just buy it on a whim because you've seen me with it. I really need you to listen to it, see if you like it. I certainly did, and it works for me and my collection. But it's by it's kind of tone poet type money for it, so do bear that in mind. So what I'm going to do at this point is pause the video so the memory card doesn't run out, and we'll continue with the remainder of the tracks that the albums that I need to talk to you about. But yeah, certainly give this one a listen in its entirety, see what you think. So that's the John Betch Society. The album's entitled Earth Blossom, and it is a 1974 release, and the track that I'm going to be using is Ode to Ethiopia. All right, give me back again. So let's continue where we were. We've just spoken about the John Betch Society and the album Earth Blossom. The 9th album today. You definitely would have seen this in the wild. You definitely. I've got no doubts about that. For viewers of this channel, it's a 1974 release. It's done by a gentleman called Harold McKinney, and let's just see if I'm just trying to work out what's the album name and what's the name of his kind of like band type thing. But anyway, I think the title of the album is Voices and Rhythms of Creative Profile. Okay. That's the cover. Again, as you can see, it's got images certainly of that kind of era. Let's have a look. Have I got something? Oh, lyrics. Yeah, nice touch. I really bought, I'm going to read what my notes are, and then I'm going to tell you what my overall impressions are. Notables on this particular album are Wendell Harrison appears on flute, Marcus Belgrave is on trumpet. So yeah, that's the, that's a stellar lineup, to be quite honest. What have I written? Wildly patchy album, played with vigor, but evidently with no overall theme. So again, as it happens with quite a few spiritual jazz albums, they're not spiritual jazz albums in and of themselves. They're jazz albums, mainly experimental jazz albums, which one of the tracks, or it happens to contain on that album, a spiritual jazz track. So yeah, this falls under that category. As I said, you more than likely, quite a few of you I suspect quite a few of you have this album, and you may or may not agree with what I've got to say next. Why I bought, I'm going to be honest with you, I bought this album really for one track. There are 3 tracks on there of note, and I'll go through the 2 lesser ones as far as I'm concerned. Freedom Jazz Dance and Dolphin Dance. You might even, you guys might know versions of it from the kind of jazz club scene kind of thing. They're more danceable jazz tracks. But I didn't buy this album for that. I bought this album for a track called Ode to Africa. Now, I heard that initially heard it on, this is like many decades ago, on a Giles Peterson compilation, and the track literally blew my mind. So in my kind of like, daydream type things, it's like I always thought to myself, if I ever come across the album which that track comes from, I'm going to buy it immediately. I'm going to pull the trigger. I must have that. And certainly when I came to come across this copy, just pulled the trigger immediately. I just knew I didn't care about the rest of the album. If it happened to contain another half decent track, then so be it. But as long as it had Ode to Africa on it, in the version that what I was aware of, I was going to have it. So your mileage might vary with this particular album. I'm going to be honest, there's probably a couple of tracks on there which absolutely are shocking, and I don't want to revisit them ever again. But in terms of the tracks I do like, which happen to be 3 tracks off this 7-track album, you got to make up your own mind. I don't regret having this album. Like I said, I've seen a few pressings of this album. Originals, again, like with everything in jazz, if you want an original copy of it, you are going to be paying probably ridiculous amounts of money for it. Represses are going to be more kind of like reasonable, but again, you're going to be looking around, I think, the prices are crept up since I purchased mine. You're going to be looking at Tone Poets type money for it, that kind of ballpark. So make an informed decision. Again, I don't regret having this album in my collection. yeah, glad to have it. It's not, you know, just one of those. Yeah, so just one of those things. So be aware. I'm going to leave a link down below so you can hear it for yourself. And I will be using the track Ode to Africa. And if you've never heard it before, I hope you're in, strap yourselves in. You're in for an experience with it. It's not Shine coming forward, that particular track. So there you go. So that is the 9th album today. The 10th album, I'd say this is underrated. Quite a few people have got it, but yeah, I still say like probably it doesn't get the kudos that it probably deserves. Let's find my note for it. It's a 1979 release. It's by a gentleman called Dawan Muhammad, and the album's entitled Deep Stream. So yeah, for those who've already got this album, you know how good this album is. It's a really good jazz album, full stop. And as a spiritual jazz album, yeah, it ticks most of the boxes. Let's see what some of my what my notes are. Simply gorgeous jazz album. A number of rewarding tracks are, sorry, a number of rewarding vocal tracks are featured. Yes, absolutely astonishing vocal performance by Dolores Pierce on this particular album. Yeah, I'm not going to take that back. And I've always had a soft spot for this album. Yeah, it's just a really good jazz experience, this particular album, and it just happens to have spiritual jazz elements to it. So this is, of some of the albums I've shown you today, this is one of the stronger recommendations, because just as a baseline jazz album, I would recommend this album to you. So if you don't have it already, never heard of it before, please give not only the track that I'm going to be leaving a link down below to, but listen to the entire album. And I'd say definitely seek this one out if you're interested in jazz at all, and you don't have this album. Really strong recommendation for you. So again, the album's entitled Deep Stream, and it's by Dawan Muhammad. So that's the 10th album today. Right, I think that will do for today. 10 spiritual jazz albums, or 10 jazz albums which contain spiritual jazz elements. Yeah, I think that's enough. I think that's enough for you to be getting along with. It's been an absolute pleasure putting these together. Yeah, kind of glad that I've got enough material to go, here you go, you can have it all in one package type thing. Yes, again, thank you. Well, as by way of an outro, I want to thank Public Piper again for his contribution, and again for those who are interested, who have enjoyed the content, please consider subscribing, liking, sharing, leaving a comment down below. You don't have to agree with anything that I've been saying. You don't have to, and if you don't, please make it, be polite about it, but let me know in the comment section if your view doesn't correspond with mine. It does help me and the rest of the community, weigh our thoughts in terms of whether or not particular albums are worthy of our collections. But collections are a wholly personal experience, so you work hard enough, you buy what you want, type of thing. But yeah, be good to hear other people's perspectives. As you can see, I'm proudly adorning the one of the prototypes of the Sakatan t-shirts. Again, if you like the look of it and you would like one of your own, please go back to the introduction to this video, and it'll tell you what the situation is, but I will quickly give it to you once more time. It's going to be, t-shirts will be made on an individual order basis. There's going to be, probably on the initial run, if I do release these, there'll be like 4 different base color t-shirts, and each one of the t-shirts will have a different color combination for the actual logo. You will see them in videos to come, but if you'd like to express an interest, please let me know in the comment section. You can, so in the about section, I've also got an email that you can email me and say, oh, you know what, I want all of any t-shirt that you make, I want it, type thing. And yeah, we'll be in communication. Or you can let me know via my Instagram account. So any one of these ways you can let me know if you'd like to express an interest. But as I said, for items, you know, if you live outside the UK and you want one of these t-shirts, I can't send it to you. I can't. I don't want the responsibility. It'll have to be sent to a UK address, and you would deal with it from there. So as long as you know that, that's fine. Thank you so much. It's been a great year in YouTube, and yeah, just listening to albums type of thing from my point of view and putting out videos. I've definitely enjoyed it. I will be continuing into the new year. I've already got a number of jazz albums to present to you. Hopefully you'll enjoy them as much as I do, and we'll take it from there, kind of thing. So thank you so much for joining me. Stay safe, enjoy the festivities, indulge yourselves, listen to some jazz. Why don't you? Yeah, stay safe, and I will see you soon for another video, and you know, another, you'll see a different, yeah, different. I'll make sure that I've got one of the other kind of not same design, but a color variant of this t-shirt, so again you'll be able to see it for yourself. So, and until then, take care of yourself, stay safe, and I will see you soon.